This is just some little notes that we're going to start off with parallel, perpendicular. We're going to talk today about how to write parallel and perpendicular lines. What the difference is between parallel and perpendicular. So just write down the word parallel, write down perpendicular, and we shall talk, okay? Parallel lines, if they were graphed, say I have a parallel line, I have a line that's right here. Up 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. Right, we connect them like that. A parallel line would be like this. You guys agree with me? Okay. Parallel lines are two lines that never, ever, 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 ever intersect. Okay, graphically, that's what they look like. When you talk about slope of parallel lines, this is the notation for parallel, so I'm going to use that. Not write the word parallel every time. I'm just going to say parallel lines. So parallel slope. If I were to calculate the slope on this line from here to here, I went up 1, 2, and over 1, 2, right? Okay, pick a point here to the next point. Here, up 1, 1, 2, over 2. What do you notice about the slopes? They're the same. Parallel lines have the same slope. Absolutely same number value and the same sign. So if you guys have an equation that's like y equals 1/3 x minus 7, what is the slope in this line? What's the slope? 1 over 3. And I said to you guys, what would the parallel slope be for this line? If you were going to write a line that was, or the equation of a line that was parallel to this, you would tell me it's what? The parallel slope would be 1 over 3. Does everybody understand that? We're good? Okay, perpendicular. What does perpendicular mean? If something is perpendicular, two lines meet at what? A right angle. Good. The sign for perpendicular is the upside down T. So perpendicular lines, so I have a line like this, and I have a line like this. These are perpendicular because they meet at a right angle. They're not always all vertical and horizontal. I'm just showing you. They meet at a right angle. Perpendicular lines, the perpendicular slope is not the same. Does anybody know anything about perpendicular slopes algebraically? It's the opposite reciprocal. What does that mean? Anybody? What's reciprocal? Oh, goodness. Okay, say we have a slope that is 2/3, and I want the perpendicular slope. Well, 2/3 is what kind of a number? Positive or negative? Positive. So the opposite of positive would be negative. And the reciprocal of 2 over 3 would be what? 3 over 2. So if lines are perpendicular, their slopes have opposite signs. One is negative, one is positive. And they're reciprocals of each other. Guys, understand, if you have a slope of 3, what's the perpendicular slope? Well, write it. If it's a whole number, put a 1 underneath it. Say your slope is negative 3. What is the perpendicular slope? Change the sign. So positive 1 over 3. Good. Say your slope is 1. What's the perpendicular slope? Think about this. This is 1 over 1, right? So it's positive 1. So what's the perpendicular slope? Negative, then what? 1. Good. Negative 1 over 1. What happens if your slope is 0? What's the perpendicular slope? Not 0. Think about this. This is, what is it? Undefined. Very good. Very good. Good job, bud. Because 0 over 1 is 0. But 1 over 0 is what? Undefined. So it's really important. You guys are going to have questions where they give you two lines. You have to get them both into y equals mx plus b. And then compare the slopes. Are they perpendicular, parallel, or neither? If they're not the same, they're not parallel. If they're not opposite reciprocals, they're not perpendicular. So they would be what's categorized as neither. Does everybody understand that? Okay, so let's do a couple examples. It says find the equation of a line through the point 5, 2. It's parallel. We're going to do parallel and perpendicular. We're going to do 2 examples so you guys can see both. But it's parallel or perpendicular to this line. Can you guys look at that and tell me what the slope is? No. So we're going to have to do what? 4x plus 6y plus 5 equals 0. How do I get y all by itself? We're going to subtract 4x and subtract 5 from both sides. So minus 4x minus 5. So 4x cancels, 5 cancels. You're left with 6y equals negative 4x minus 5, right? You guys agree? Okay, so one more thing I had to do. Divide by 6. Divide everything by 6. So I get y equals. What is 4 over 6 reduced to? Negative 2 over 3, good. X minus 5, 6. That y-intercept doesn't mean anything to you guys. You don't need it. The only thing that matters is that you just solve for the slope. So if we're going to write a line that is parallel to this line, what is the slope going to be that we use? Parallel lines have, parallel lines have the same slope. So I'm going to use the slope negative 2 over 3. Perpendicular lines have what? Is what? They will. They'll meet at a right angle. So what's the slope? If the parallel line is negative 2/3, it's positive, good, 3 over 2. Once you guys figure out the slopes, this is really easy to do. It's really easy to write these two because you're going to use your point slope form. And point slope form, remember, we're going to use it for both of them, is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. You do the exact same thing every time. Excuse me, you might have a fraction, that's no big deal, but you use this formula, and then you use the slope and a point. So in this case, they want the point through this. Excuse me, they want to point through 5, 2. So I'm going to say y minus, what's the y part of the point that they gave me? What's the y? 2, okay. Equals, we're using the parallel slope, so negative 2/3. Then I have x minus, what's the point that they gave me, the x part? 5. Perfect. Now we're going to do what we did yesterday. All you're doing is, thank you very much, you're going to distribute. Right, we're going to algebraically isolate y, get it by itself. So what do I do with that negative 2/3? Distribute it. Awesome. So I go here and I go here. So y minus 2 just stays. Leave it alone. So I have negative 2/3 x. Guys, when you multiply fractions, you multiply numerators, you multiply denominators. So negative 2 times negative 5 is positive 10, and 3 times 1 would be 3. So it's plus 10 over 3, right? And now we freak out just a little bit because we're like, oh no, we have to add fractions. That's okay, we can do it. I have to get y all by itself, so what do? I'm going to add 2. Add 2 here and add 2 here. So we end up with y equals negative 2/3 x. Now we're going to get a common denominator. What is a common denominator between 1 and 3? 3. So this will stay as 10/3. If I change this to 3s, to thirds, I should say. 1 times 3 is 3. So what you do to the bottom, you do to the top. And 2 times 3 is 6, right? So when I add these together, 10 plus 6 is, so 16 over 3. And there's your equation. I'm not asking you guys to graph that. But I am asking you to look and say, okay, I told myself at the beginning that my parallel slope was going to be negative 2/3. Is that what I have here? So my line is parallel to the one that they gave us over here. Now, perpendicular, you guys have already discovered what the perpendicular slope is. So now this is easy. We're going to do the exact same thing, but we're going to use the perpendicular slope. Same point. So we're going to say y minus, what's the y part? 2 equals, now I'm going to use the perpendicular slope of 3 over 2. And then I have x minus 5, right? Now, should this line turn out to be exactly the same? No, it should not. If it does, then you did something wrong. So we're going to distribute the 3 over 2. So I have y minus 2 equals 3 over 2x. And this is over 1. So 3 times 5 is 15. And then 2 times 1 is 2. Okay? Last step. What do we have to do? Add the 2. I'm adding 2 over 1. So I'm left with y equals, I have 3 over 2x. Now, guys, look, I'm getting a common denominator. Notice that that 15 is negative, right? You guys see how 15 is negative? I would write the negative over here when you rewrite the number, just so you don't forget it. You might forget that it was negative when you combine them, make a silly mistake. So I would just carry it over. But what is the common denominator between 2 and 1? It's 2. So if I multiply the bottom by 2, then I multiply the top by 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So negative 15 and a positive 4. Minus 11 over 2. Again, I'm not asking you to graph that. But notice in your original, our slope was negative 2/3. In my perpendicular, it should be opposite reciprocal, which it is. So that's it. The process is the exact same every time. You find the slope, whether they gave you 2 points to find slope or a line. The parallel line will have the same slope, and then you use the point slope formula. Or the perpendicular line will be opposite reciprocals. Anybody have any questions? All right, to the next example, and then I'll let you guys get started. I changed this a little bit. Notice I changed the ordered pair to fractions. Go ahead and do that. Now, they didn't give me a line. What did they give me? They gave me what? They gave me 2 points. What can I do with those 2 points to find a slope? Do we know a formula that if we have 2 points, we can find a slope, guys? Yep, what is it? The slope formula? So I have y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So the y's that I'm going to use, I'm just going to say 4 minus 7. If I use 4 on the bottom, 4 on the top first, what do I have to use on the bottom? 2. So 2 minus a negative 3. What is 4 minus 7? Negative 3. What is 2 minus a negative 3? Positive 5, right? So the slope that they want me to use is negative 3 over 5. So I'm going to write 2 lines, one that's parallel and one that's perpendicular. The parallel line, what slope am I going to use? What is a line that is parallel? What's the slope going to be? Negative what? Negative 3 over 5, right? Parallel lines have the same slope. The point that I'm going to write the line through is what they gave me. Negative 4, 3, comma, 5, 7. Over here, I'm going to get this one ready. I'm not going to do it right now, but what's the perpendicular slope? If the slope that I started off with was negative 3/5, what is the perpendicular slope? What is it? Positive 5 over 3. Switch the sign, then flip it. And I'm still going to use the same point that they told me through negative 4/3, 5 over 7. So now the process is exactly the same. We're going to use our point slope form, throw it in, simplify. This is my x, this is my y. So I have y minus, what's the y value of the point that they gave us? 5 over 7 equals, what's the slope? Negative 3 over 5 times x minus. Well, if you have minus a negative, that becomes what? Plus, so plus 4/3. What do I do with that negative 3/5? Distribute it, so I keep my y minus 5 over 7. So this just becomes negative 3 over 5x. Negative 3 times positive 4 is negative what? Negative 12. And then 5 times 3 is 15. Okay, does that simplify? Yes or no? Yes, you don't have to simplify right now if you don't want to, but to make your numbers a little easier, you might want to. What could I simplify 12 over 15 to? If I divide the top and bottom by 3, what does it become? 4 over 5? Good. So negative 4 over 5. If you did not simplify there, that's okay. But you have to make sure you simplify at the very end. So the last thing I need to do to get y by itself is what? Add 5 over 7. Great. So add 5 over 7. So y equals, I have negative 3/5 x. Is there a common denominator between 5 and 7? What would it be? What's 5 times 7? What's 5 times 7? 35, okay. So think about it. To change 7 to 35, I had to multiply by 5. What you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So 5 times 5 is 25. To change 5 into 35, I had to multiply by 7. What you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So remember, guys, that was negative 4/5, right? So this is negative 28. So I think it's a good idea to bring the negative with it. So if I combine these, what's a negative 28 and a positive 25? Yep, negative 3 over 35. And there is your line. The hardest part about this is not the slopes. It's not figuring out what the parallel and perpendicular is. It's the adding and subtracting of fractions, which is like 6th grade, right? That's not our college algebra stuff. You guys understand the concept of a parallel or perpendicular line and the slopes and all that stuff. We've got to get good with fractions, guys, because they're not going to go anywhere. So let's do the same thing, and then I'll let you guys get started. We're going to use our point slope form. So I have y minus 5 over 7 again equals, my slope now this time is 5 over 3 positive, and then I have x minus a negative becomes plus 4 over 3. If you guys notice, it's the exact same setup. The only thing that changed was the slope that we used, right? So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to distribute 5/3. So this y minus 5 over 7 stays. That'll be the last thing we do. So I have 5 over 3x. And now we're going to multiply. What's 5 times 4? 20. And 3 times 3 is 9. Perfect. Now to get y by itself, I'm going to add 5/7 to both sides. Well, not awful, not great, but I have to get a common denominator between 9 and 7. What is it? What's 9 times 7? 63. Okay, we'll just do that. 7 times 9 is 63. So what you do to the bottom, you do to the top. 5 times 9 is 45. 9 times 7 is 63. So what you do to the bottom, you do to the top. What's 20 times 7? 140. So now we combine. Those are both positive. So what's 140 plus 45? 185 over 63. There, ladies and gentlemen, is your answer. Notice the slope of this line is negative 3/5. The slope of this one is positive 5 over 3. They are opposite reciprocals of each other. The signs are different and they are flipped over. Does that make sense? Okay.